In an era of quarterback play where numbers are bigger than ever before, the 2023 NFL season has been a rare down year relative to the big numbers we've seen in the past. In 2022, we saw MVP winner Patrick Mahomes throw for over 5,200 yards and 41 touchdowns, and in 2020 and 2021, we saw Aaron Rodgers go on an absolute tear as he would throw for a combined 85 touchdowns in those two seasons. But the 2023 NFL season has been a lot different in that regard. Defenses are changing how quarterbacks have to attack them, and through 11 weeks, Josh Allen is leading the NFL in passing touchdowns with 22 on the year, and there were only two players with 20 or more passing touchdowns through the first 11 weeks, and the other is Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. The 2023 MVP race is completely wide open, and in today's video, we're going to discuss several players and their case as to why they should be the MVP, and there may even be a few non-quarterbacks discussed. Now let's begin. And we are starting today's video with the defending MVP, Patrick Mahomes. Through 10 games, Patrick has 19 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, and the Chiefs are 7-3. And just being honest, I would be surprised if Patrick wins the MVP this year, though it's not really his fault. The Monday night game against the Eagles was embarrassing for the Chiefs receivers, and that's a big reason why I don't think Mahomes will win the MVP this year. Ultimately, I think they'll figure it out, and I would be surprised if they're not in the AFC Championship game for the 6th straight year, but that doesn't have anything to do with the MVP award. Yes, Patrick is Patrick and he makes jaw-dropping plays, but there's been a lot of plays this year where he's not the same Mahomes we've seen in years past, and guys like Mahomes will get voter fatigue, and unless they have a clear MVP winning year where they have 45 or 50 total touchdowns, they're probably not going to win. And on top of it, it doesn't help Mahomes' case that he's 5th in the league in interceptions with 9 in 10 games. We've seen the receivers play poorly, whether it was MVS against the Eagles or the Kadarius Toney pick 6 in week 1 most notably, and that's naturally going to bring down a quarterback's numbers. And I also think it's fair to say Patrick in 2023 is not playing on the same level he was in 2022. Outside of a stat padding game against the Bears and a domination of the Chargers, Mahomes hasn't been the same Patrick Mahomes we've seen in years past, and when you have that type of standard to live up to, it's hard to win an MVP award when people have seen what you are capable of. Yes, he has Andy Reid, and yes, he has Travis Kelce, but outside of that, the help he has on offense from a receiving standpoint is pretty slim. There's no doubt this team is missing Tyreek Hill, and this team has a different feel to Chiefs teams than we've seen in the past. I still wouldn't bet against Patrick Mahomes with the game on the line, but I would be pretty surprised if he wins the MVP this year. Next up is Lamar Jackson of the Ravens, and through the first 7 games of the 2023 season, I was really high on the Lamar MVP train, and I thought there was a solid chance he would win the second MVP award of his career. And since the Lions game in week 7, in which he would ultimately throw for 357 yards and 3 touchdowns, he's slowed down significantly, and in the past 4 games, he has 831 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and has 172 yards on the ground. That's not bad production, of course, but it's certainly not MVP level production, and with tight end Mark Andrews being done for the regular season, Lamar's favorite target, I would be surprised if his production gets back into the MVP conversation. I think it would almost have to rely on the defense winning the team games by holding them to 15 points or less, with Lamar getting a lot of gimme touchdowns down the stretch, and he would have to have multiple 3-touchdown games. He has just 12 passing touchdowns in 11 games, and he does have the 5 rushing touchdowns on the season, but right now he is on pace for 27 total touchdowns, and he just lost his best offensive weapon. I like Todd Monken as the team's offensive coordinator, but to propel Lamar past other MVP candidates with a wide receiver core of Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham, and Rashad Bateman, to me is a little too tall of an order at this point in time. If Lamar were to win the MVP, strictly from a voting standpoint, because the individual numbers will matter a lot, he would have to take a lot of the rushing touchdowns Gus Edwards has been getting. And Lamar doesn't care about individual numbers. He cares about wins, and I mean that in the best way possible. There's only 6 games left for the Ravens, and given he only has 12 passing touchdowns in 11 games, I would be surprised if he threw for 13 or 14 touchdowns in the final 6 games to put him at a final tally of 26 on the year, which would almost be required just to get his name in the discussion. The Ravens are serious contenders, but I do not think Lamar is going to win the MVP award. And from the Charm City to the big state of Texas for Coleridge Stroud IV. CJ is an easy player to root for as he was drafted to a team just 7 months ago that we can call it what it is. They were expected to stink this year and they were expected to be a 5 or 6 win team at most. But in CJ's first 10 games, he's thrown for over 2,900 yards and 17 touchdowns and ran for an additional 2 touchdowns. Him even being in the MVP conversation is pretty wild in itself, and it speaks volumes to the year he's having. CJ's top 2 receivers are Nico Collins and Tank Dell, and while those guys aren't bad, nobody would confuse them with the elite receivers across the league. And CJ having some magical moments throughout his rookie year, like the game in Jacksonville, or the come-from-behind win against Tampa in which he threw for 470 yards and 5 touchdowns, or the win in Cincinnati in which he threw for over 350 yards, all were great times and fun memories from his rookie year, and there's still 7 games to play. In order for CJ to win the MVP, the numbers are obviously going to have to continue, but I worry for CJ in the coming weeks as he plays the Jags in Week 12, who will want vengeance from how he embarrassed them back in Week 3, in the Jag Stadium, by the way, the Broncos, who have been playing great defensive football, and the Jets, whose defense is solid, and again, their defense, not their offense in any capacity. The Browns' defense is another team the Texans will play, and they have one of the best defenses in all of football. CJ has several tough games ahead, and on the year he has a 17-5 touchdown to interception ratio, and if he can finish with something in the ballpark of a 29-8 or a 30-9 ratio along with the Texans sweeping the Jags en route to an AFC South division title, he will certainly be in the conversation. And as crazy as this sounds, if that happens, I think CJ would finish in the top 3 for the award as a rookie. They've won 3 straight games, and CJ has 3 straight 300-yard games at the time of this video release, and CJ is currently second in the NFL in passing yards through 11 weeks. Him winning the MVP award will have a lot to do with the Texans winning the AFC South, but I do think Stroud will be in the conversation at season's end even more than he already is. To the Sunshine State for Tyreek Hill of the Dolphins, and there is a real possibility Tyreek becomes the first 2,000-yard receiver, and he certainly has a place in the MVP discussion. Tyreek started the 2023 season off with a bang as he had an 11-catch, 215-yard, 2-touchdown performance in Week 1 against the Chargers, and he currently has 6 100-yard games. Tyreek also has 4 150-plus yard games, and when he was traded to the Dolphins, there was a lot of discussion about how he would inevitably drop off without Patrick Mahomes, and how he was going to Miami to waste the rest of his career. But it's really been the opposite, and when you break down the term most valuable player, how many players across the league are more valuable to their team than Tyreek Hill? He is a machine, and he is a very fun player to watch, and you don't have to worry about the weather slowing him down in December down in Miami like you might in other cold cities. Tyreek has 9 receiving touchdowns on the year, and he is currently leading the NFL in receiving yards and touchdowns, and is only 4 receptions behind the Chargers' Keenan Allen for the most in the league. If Tyreek wins the Triple Crown in what is a down year statistically for quarterbacks across the board, he will be in the conversation, and there is a legitimate chance he wins. The last non-quarterback to win the MVP was Adrian Peterson back in 2012, as he was on his way to a near 2,100-yard season, along with 12 rushing touchdowns. I really don't worry with Tyreek's opponents coming up because I fully believe in Mike McDaniel getting him the football, whether that's on screens, touch passes, or motions into drag routes, which are insanely difficult to defend due to his speed. The game plan for the Dolphins every week is and should be simple. Allocate at least 10 targets to Tyreek and reap the rewards. Through 11 weeks, he is on pace for a 134-catch, 2,077-yard, 15-touchdown season, and Tyreek could very easily finish the year with not just 10 100-yard games, but 6 150-plus yard games. Next up is Myles Garrett of the Cleveland Browns, and we live in a pass-rushing era where I think guys like Myles, Micah, TJ, Max, and many others, hell, even Nick Bosa, almost get dismissed because the guys are so dominant. But Myles is playing on another level, and he has 13 sacks in 10 games, and I think the most compelling case for Myles to win the MVP is how much respect he's shown every single week. Opposing teams' game plans start with, how the hell do we stop number 95? And the short answer is, you don't. touchdowns. Miles is tied for 9th in pressures with 48 on the year, but what's impressive about Miles is his pass rush win rate is a staggering 26.7%. Winning pass rush reps at the rate he is unheard of, and to show you how dominant Miles is this year, Nick Bosa's win rate last year during his Defensive Player of the Year campaign was 19.9%, TJ Watt's was 15.6% during his record-breaking season in 2021, and Aaron Donald's was 21.4% during his 20-sack season back in 2018, and this is all per PFF. I think the play that summarizes Miles' campaign was the play against the Titans, where they were motioning guys along with Miles just to ensure he didn't absolutely wreck the play, and unintentionally, they received a delay of game penalty. And when you can dictate that much of the game at the NFL level pre-snap, guys, the season Miles is having is a once-in-a-decade type year. To be in the opponent's head that much prior to the ball being snapped is unheard of. How many guys can say they've done that? The answer is not many, and the Browns defense is also one of the best in football, as they've allowed 10 points or fewer in 4 of the 10 games they've played. They should have never lost to Pittsburgh, as the Steelers had 2 defensive touchdowns in this game, and out of the 26 points the Steelers scored, the Browns defense gave up 12. Miles' 13 sacks in 10 games actually puts him on pace for 22 sacks for the entire 17-game season, and with the way he impacts the game every single play, he, like Tyreek, deserved to be in the MVP conversation. He's also on pace to have 7 forced fumbles, and the Browns defense is one nobody wants to play, and it's due to Myles Garrett. Alright, that will wrap up today's... Oh wait, there's a guy that plays in southeastern Pennsylvania by the name of Jaylen Hurts. Jaylen is a tremendous dual-threat quarterback and currently has 24 total touchdowns on the year, with 15 through the air and 9 on the ground. Jaylen is currently on pace for a 41 total touchdown season, with what would be an insane 15 rushing touchdowns. The Eagles are one of the best teams in football, and they very well could win the Super Bowl this year, and a lot of people use the best team aspect to try and discredit Jaylen, as if he doesn't do his job and then some for this team either. And a lot of people, like they do with Lamar, like to get their cracks in about him being a runner, but Jaylen is actually on pace to throw for over 4,000 yards this year. And believe it or not, and this may be the most insane stat of all, Jaylen has now won 13 straight games against teams with winning records, and that is the longest streak by a quarterback over the last 73 years. He is 26-2 in his last 28 starts, and they overcame a double-digit deficit over the Chiefs, in which he had not 1, but 2 second-half touchdowns. Jaylen nearly won the MVP award in 2022 after he had a 35 total touchdown season, and a year the Eagles would go to the Super Bowl. He is currently 3rd in the NFL in rushing touchdowns behind Raheem Mostert and Gus Edwards, and given how effective the tush-push is, there's a very real chance Jaylen has the most rushing touchdowns of any player this year. And if you have a 4,000-yard passer along with 23 or 24 passing touchdowns, and hell, maybe 14 or 15 rushing touchdowns, that would subsequently lead the league, that player would probably win the MVP award. And with how many good teams the Eagles have coming up with their schedule, as soon as they get inside the 2-yard line, everyone in the world knows what play is coming. And I do think Jaylen will not only lead the league in rushing touchdowns, but he is my pick to win the MVP at this point in time. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. It's only about 28% of people watching are subscribed, and it helps the growth tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.